The sharp sound of claws scraping against the wooden floor jolts Ryan awake. A deep, frantic whimper echoes through the dimly lit room. He blinks, disoriented, heart pounding against his ribs. The glow of the digital clock burns 3:47 a.m. into the darkness. Another desperate scratch. Ryan groans, rubbing his temples, exhaustion weighing heavy in his bones. Max, his German shepherd, stands rigid by the far wall, his tail stiff, ears pricked forward, eyes locked onto the smooth plaster as if something lurks beneath. His breathing is uneven, sharp pants breaking the silence. Max? What the hell is wrong with you? The dog doesn't flinch. Another whimper escapes, followed by the furious digging of claws against the drywall. Ryan drags himself up, feet cold against the wooden floor. He approaches, brows furrowed. The same spot again. This isn't the first time. For the past 3 nights, Max has been fixated here. Scratching, sniffing, whining. Ryan sighs. Probably a rat. Or a squirrel trapped between the walls. He presses a palm against the cold surface, listening. Silence. Max growls, low and uneasy. The kind of growl that sends a shiver through Ryan's spine. The kind that speaks of something more than just a rodent. Ryan exhales, shaking his head. Enough, buddy. Go back to sleep. But Max doesn't move. His entire body trembles, muscles tense, eyes wild with urgency. Something is wrong. And this time, Ryan can feel it too. A sudden bark shatters the silence. Deep, urgent, almost desperate. Ryan flinches, heart pounding. Max lunges at the wall, paws slamming against the plaster, his bark turning into a furious snarl. Max! Enough! But the dog doesn't stop. His body is rigid, tail stiff, ears locked forward. His instincts scream at him. Ryan swallows hard, a strange unease creeping into his chest. Something isn't right. He steps closer, placing a tentative hand against the wall. The surface is cool, smooth beneath his fingertips. He presses his ear against it. Silence. Ryan exhales, relief washing over him. Nothing. He was right, just a rat. Or maybe Max is just being weird. Then a sound. Soft. Faint. A muffled cry. Ryan jerks back, breath catching in his throat. His skin prickles, stomach twisting. That wasn't his imagination. Max whimpers, his tail still, his body trembling. He looks up at Ryan, eyes pleading. Ryan's hands shake. He forces himself to breathe, to think. It's impossible. It has to be. Max lets out a low, anxious growl, then nudges Ryan's arm, pushing him toward the wall. Do something. Ryan stares at the plaster. His mind races. A cry. A human cry. His fingers curl into fists. He needs to know. Without another thought, he grabs the crowbar from the corner of the room. Max steps back, watching as Ryan raises the metal. A deep breath. And then, he swings. The drywall cracks. Dust fills the air. Ryan coughs, blinking through the haze as the plaster crumbles. Then, he freezes. Because inside the hollow space behind the wall, something moves. The drywall collapses, chunks of plaster crashing to the floor. Dust swirls in the dim light, making Ryan cough as he waves a hand in front of his face. The air is thick, heavy. His eyes burn. Then, a movement in the shadows. Ryan freezes. A pair of wide, terrified eyes stare back at him from the hollow space inside the wall. A child. A small girl, curled up tight, her arms wrapped around herself, her body trembling. Thin. Fragile. Bruised. Ryan's breath catches. His mind stumbles over itself, trying to make sense of what he's seeing. How? Why? She flinches at the sight of him, pressing herself deeper into the crawl space, her tiny frame shaking violently. Ryan steps back, his hands raised, his voice barely above a whisper. Hey, it's okay. She doesn't move. Doesn't blink. Only stares. Max, silent now, takes a slow step forward. His tail low, his ears tilted forward, Not aggressive, not afraid. Gentle. He sniffs the air, then presses his nose against the girl's small, trembling hand. She gasps. Her fingers twitch. Max licks her skin, warm and soft, a silent reassurance. For the first time, her body relaxes. Ryan swallows hard, his throat dry. His pulse hammers against his ribs. A child. Hidden in his walls. Who put her here? Why? His voice comes out softer this time. You're safe now. The girl stares at him, her lips barely moving. A whisper, faint as breath. Lily. Ryan's chest tightens. Her name. His fingers curl into his palms. Who locked her away? And more importantly, who is still looking for her? Ryan kneels, his mind still struggling to catch up with reality. Lily, a child locked inside his walls. She doesn't move. Doesn't speak. Just stares, eyes hollow, lips chapped, knees pulled to her chest. She's afraid. Terrified. Ryan swallows the lump in his throat, forcing his voice to stay gentle. Are you hurt? No response. Max sits beside her, watching closely, his tail flicking softly against the floor. He stays still, calm, his presence like an anchor in the storm. Ryan exhales, rubbing a hand down his face. Food. That's the first step. He stands, moving carefully toward the kitchen, pulling out a loaf of bread, peanut butter, a glass of milk. Lily doesn't move as he sets the plate in front of her. For a moment, she just stares at it. Then, slowly, her small, shaky fingers reach forward. She picks up the sandwich like she's never seen food before. Like she's afraid it'll be taken away. A hesitant bite. Then another. She chews carefully, watching him the entire time. Ryan pretends not to notice the way she glances around, as if expecting someone to stop her. His chest tightens. How long had she been in there? She finishes the sandwich, setting the plate down without a word. Ryan leans forward, resting his arms on his knees. Lily! She tenses, her fingers curling into Max's fur. He keeps his voice steady. Soft. Who put you there? Silence. Lily lowers her head, pressing her face against Max's thick coat. Ryan's jaw tightens. She won't say it. But she doesn't have to. The way her body stiffens. The way her breath catches in her throat. Someone did this to her. And whoever it was, they aren't finished. Max lets out a quiet whine, shifting closer to Lily, pressing against her like he understands. Ryan runs a hand through his hair, his mind racing. Someone locked her in that wall. Someone left her there to disappear. And when they realize she's gone, they'll come looking. Ryan clenches his fists. Over his dead body. The house is silent. Ryan leans against the couch, exhaustion heavy in his limbs. His mind spins, replaying the night's events over and over. Max sleeps near the door, his ears twitching every now and then. Ever watchful. Lily is curled up in the armchair, wrapped in a blanket too big for her. She hasn't said much since dinner. Just silent, cautious glances, like she's waiting for something to happen. Ryan exhales, rubbing a hand over his face. Something feels off. A weight in his chest. A nagging, creeping feeling. Like he's being watched. The air feels thicker. He glances toward the window. The blinds are shut. Why does it still feel like something is out there? A soft whimper. Ryan turns. Lily shifts in her sleep, her breath quick, uneven. Her small fingers twitch against the blanket. Then, she jerks awake. Her hand clutches Ryan's arm, knuckles white. Her chest rises and falls in panicked gasps. Her voice is barely a whisper. He's here. Ryan's stomach drops. His pulse pounds against his ears. He follows her gaze toward the window. The blinds sway slightly, as if something had just been near them. He looks outside. And then, he sees him. A figure. Standing at the treeline. Not moving. Just watching. Ryan's breath catches. The figure is barely visible, a dark silhouette against the faint glow of the street lamp. He doesn't step forward. Doesn't turn away. Just stands there. Staring. Max lifts his head, ears pinned back, a low growl building in his throat. Ryan's hand inches toward the gun tucked beneath the coffee table. His fingers wrap around the cold steel, pulse hammering. Then, the figure disappears. No movement. No sound. Just gone. Ryan's jaw tightens. Whoever put Lily in that wall isn't finished. Ryan doesn't hesitate. His gut screams move. Now. He grips Lily's wrist, pulling her to her feet. Max is already up, his body tense, ears pinned forward, eyes locked on the window. We have to go. Lily doesn't question him. She just nods, her small fingers gripping Max's fur like a lifeline. Ryan grabs his duffel bag, his gun, cash, and whatever supplies he can shove inside. The air outside is thick. The darkness feels heavier now. Max stays low, his tail stiff, his head swiveling. He can feel it too. Ryan shoves Lily into the truck and slams the door shut. The engine roars to life. He grips the wheel, checking the mirrors. Nothing. Not yet. With a deep breath, he punches the gas. The tires spin, gravel spraying as the truck lurches forward. They tear down the road, disappearing into the night. Ryan's eyes flick to the rearview mirror. His hands tighten on the wheel. Headlights. A single car. Far enough back to seem casual. Too far back to be a coincidence. Max lets out a low growl from the back seat, his body pressed against Lily's. Ryan's heart slams against his ribs. They're being followed. He keeps his speed steady, mind racing. If he floors it, they'll know he's running. If he plays it cool, maybe they'll make a mistake. He grips the wheel, breath steady. Not yet. Not yet. The road stretches ahead, then suddenly splits. Ryan makes a split-second decision. He cuts the wheel hard to the right. The truck jerks, tires skidding, kicking up dust, then launches off the paved road onto an old dirt path. Lily gasps, gripping the seatbelt. The truck bounces violently, the undercarriage scraping against the uneven ground. Ryan doesn't slow down. Neither do they. The headlights behind them grow brighter. They're gaining. Ryan's hands tighten on the wheel. He sees the problem now. The road ahead dead ends into the forest. They think they've trapped him. They think he'll have to stop. They're wrong. Ryan slams the gearshift down. Max barks, a sharp, urgent sound. Lily squeezes her eyes shut. Ryan grits his teeth. The headlights grow impossibly bright. Then, he veers left. The truck crashes through the tree line, branches scraping against the windows, tires sliding over wet leaves. The vehicle behind them doesn't react in time. They swerve, too late. A loud screech of brakes, a crunch of metal and snapping branches. Ryan doesn't look back. He pushes forward, further into the darkness, further from whatever the hell that was. His knuckles are white against the steering wheel. His heart still pounds. Max settles beside Lily, his body still tense but no longer trembling. Lily peeks up at him, her voice barely a whisper. Are we safe? Ryan exhales slowly. No. His jaw tightens. This isn't over. The truck rumbles down a desolate highway, headlights cutting through the darkness. Ryan grips the wheel, his mind racing. Lily sits curled up in the passenger seat, arms wrapped around her knees. Max hasn't left her side. The night stretches on, silent except for the faint hum of the engine. Ryan knows he needs answers. He pulls into a rundown gas station, scanning the area before reaching into his pocket and pulling out an old, nearly forgotten burner phone. His fingers hover over the keys. Then he dials. The line clicks after 3 rings. A deep, tired voice answers. Ryan? Ryan exhales. It's been years. I need information. A pause. Then a sigh. What kind? Ryan glances at Lily. She watches him, silent, waiting. He lowers his voice. A little girl. Locked inside a wall. Someone was keeping her hidden. A sharp inhale on the other end. Then, a whisper. Walk away, Ryan. His grip tightens. You know I can't do that. Another pause. Then, you have no idea what you've stepped into. Ryan clenches his jaw. Tell me. Silence stretches over the line. Then, she wasn't hidden, Ryan. She was kept. Ryan's blood runs cold. His fingers tighten around the phone. By who? A slow breath. Not who. What? A sinking feeling coils in Ryan's chest. A trafficking ring. Ryan's heart slams against his ribs. High level. Ruthless. The kind that owns people. The kind that buries problems. If that kid escaped. The voice hesitates. They won't stop looking. Ryan's knuckles turn white. His jaw locks. No. That won't happen. Lily shifts in her seat. Her small, fragile voice breaks through the silence. Will you keep me safe? Ryan turns to her. Her eyes, wide, terrified, desperate for an answer. He reaches across the seat, grips her tiny hand in his. With my life. Max barks softly, his tail thumping once, a silent promise. Lily breathes out. For the first time, her fingers loosen. Ryan hangs up the phone and tosses it out the window. They're a family now. And no one, is taking her away. Night is silent. Too silent. Ryan sits in the darkness, back pressed against the cold wooden wall. His gun rests in his grip, steady, ready. Lily sleeps curled up in a nest of blankets. Max is awake, watching the door. His ears flick at every creak, every whisper of the wind. Ryan's gut tells him this is it. They found them. He tightens his grip. A faint shuffle outside. Boots on gravel. Max lets out a low growl, his body stiff, muscles coiled. Ryan inhales. Time's up. A car door clicks shut. Then another. Shadows move outside the window. They're here. Ryan rises to his feet, silent as a ghost. His mind is sharp, calculating. They think they have the upper hand. They don't. Ryan set a trap. A sudden crash. The front door bursts open. 2 men rush in. Boom. The shotgun trap Ryan rigged from the kitchen explodes, sending one of them crashing backward, unconscious before he hits the floor. The second man freezes, then lunges. Ryan ducks. A knife slices the air inches from his face. Ryan pivots, slams his elbow into the attacker's ribs, grabs his wrist, twists. A snap. The knife clatters to the ground. The man stumbles. Max launches forward, jaws snapping. A scream. She thought she had buried this part of herself. Thought she would never allow herself to love again. But Shadow has changed everything. She leans down, pressing a soft kiss to his tiny head. I've got you, she whispers. I'm not going anywhere. Sound fades to the quiet hum of the heater. The rhythmic sound of 2 steady breaths, one small, one human. The soft, silent promise between them. Sound, the distant hum of an engine. Tires cutting through the wet pavement. The faint patter of rain against the windshield. Evelyn's breathing is shaky, uneven. The road stretches into the night, dark and endless. The headlights carve a narrow path through the rain-soaked highway, illuminating nothing but emptiness. Evelyn's knuckles are white against the steering wheel. Her pulse pounds in her ears, drowning out the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers. Beside her, Daniel stares at the road ahead, his jaw clenched tight. He hasn't spoken since they sped out of the clinic's parking lot. In the back seat, Shadow is curled into a tight ball, his golden eyes flickering between them. He knows something is wrong. And he's right. Evelyn forces down the panic crawling up her throat. She checks the rearview mirror for the 100th time. Nothing. No headlights. No pursuit. Yet, the suffocating weight of danger lingers. Agent Reynolds had stood at her doorstep tonight. He had knocked once, his voice smooth, unreadable. We're looking for a dog. A very specific dog. She had known. The second she saw his sharp gaze land on Shadow, she had known. He wasn't asking. He was telling. And so, she ran. Now, with every mile she puts between them and that cold, knowing stare, the fear still clings to her like a second skin. A soft whimper breaks through the silence. Evelyn's breath catches. She risks a glance down. Shadow's small body trembles slightly in the dim light of the dashboard, his ears twitching, his tiny frame pressing against the car seat. Not from cold. From fear. Evelyn's throat tightens. Slowly, hesitantly, Shadow stretches forward. A moment later, a soft, warm tongue licks the back of her hand. Evelyn gasps. Not in surprise, but in ache. A comfort. A reassurance. A silent, "I'm here." Her vision blurs. She grips the wheel tighter, swallowing hard. "I won't let them take you." Her voice is barely a whisper, but it feels like a vow. She swallows again, but the lump in her throat refuses to go away. She blinks once, twice, trying to push the sting from her eyes. And then, a small, deliberate movement. Shadow shifts. He hesitates only for a moment before climbing onto her lap. Evelyn's breath stutters as his tiny body presses against her. Warm. Trusting. Vulnerable. And then, so gently, so deliberately, he rests his small, exhausted head on her leg. A tiny sigh escapes him. The weight of him is so light, but the feeling is unbearable. Evelyn's fingers tighten around the steering wheel as her chest constricts. Tears threaten to fall. Not from fear. Not from exhaustion. But from something far deeper. She finally understands. What he means to her. What he has always meant. She had run from this feeling before. Had buried it. Had sworn she would never, could never, let herself love another dog. But love found her anyway. In the form of a tiny, golden-eyed pup. In the way he looks at her like she's his entire world. In the way he trusts her, even now, even after everything. A small, choked breath escapes her lips. She presses her free hand gently against Shadow's back. Just for a moment. Just to feel him there. She blinks rapidly, forcing down the tears. Because there is no time for weakness. They are still being hunted. And she will not, cannot, let them take him. She is his protector now. She is his home. And no force in this world will take him away from her. Evelyn lifts her chin, her grip on the wheel steady. The road ahead is long. The night is dark. The danger is far from over. But for the first time, she knows she is no longer running. She is fighting. Sound fades to the steady hum of the car engine. The rhythmic breathing of a tiny pup in the arms of the only person who will ever truly fight for him. Sound, the distant echo of rushing wind. Leaves rustling in the trees. The sharp, uneven breaths of someone running, desperate, relentless. Shadow! Evelyn's voice shatters the silence of the forest. She stumbles forward, hands shaking, eyes wild as she scans the endless stretch of trees before her. Nothing. Not a single sign of him. Her chest burns, her legs feel weak, but she doesn't stop. She can't. Shadow, please! Her voice breaks, cracking into a choked sob as she turns, searching, praying. The trees loom tall, unmoving, silent. Her heart pounds violently against her ribs. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Not like this. A strangled breath escapes her lips as she falls to her knees, the damp earth soaking into her jeans. Her hands dig into the mud, fingers curling, grasping at nothing. A sob rips from her throat. A sound so raw, so broken, it barely sounds human. Her vision blurs. She squeezes her eyes shut, willing the world to stop spinning, willing the universe to give her one more second, just one more second with him. But there is only emptiness. Only silence. A hand rests on her shoulder. Daniel. His grip is gentle but firm. His voice is quiet, but it carries a weight that crushes her. He's free now. Evelyn sucks in a breath, her body trembling. The words hit like a knife. She knows. She knows. But knowing doesn't make it hurt any less. She wipes at her face with shaking fingers, but the tears keep falling. Her heart feels ripped open, hollowed out. Slowly, painfully, she pushes herself up. Her eyes linger on the darkness beyond the trees. She inhales deeply, shakily. And then, a sound. A rustle. Faint. Soft. Somewhere beyond the trees. Evelyn freezes. Her breath catches, her heart leaping into her throat. She doesn't move. She doesn't breathe. The wind shifts. The leaves whisper. And for a fleeting moment, she feels him. She knows he's watching. Tears well up in her eyes once more. A small, trembling smile breaks through the sorrow. She exhales, voice barely more than a whisper. "Goodbye, my boy." The wind carries her words into the night. She turns away. And there, in the mud, right where she had fallen, a single paw print remains. Sound, the whisper of wind through the trees. A final, lingering heartbeat. And then, silence.